obviously everything can't be like perfect.
Yeah.
But like if you go to like a top grocery chain and you go to the butcher and it says all those things, organic, whatever, blah, 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 what are the odds that it actually is? And is that still healthy?
So first off, there is many factors when it comes into like the cuts of meat that you are getting. There's a lot of kind of greenwashing. Can we swear on here?
Say whatever you want.
Okay. There's a lot of bullshit.
Oh,
And there's
you
a
can't
lot
say that,
of
though.
like, oh, okay. Bullshit's the one. All right. Damn it. It was very fitting. We're talking about cows. Maybe I should say cow shit. There's a lot of things that don't have any legal meaning that they put on packaging. Yep. So you have to understand that most of what you're reading is like they're like humane, this, that. There's no standards for almost any of that. So they can say anything that they want. Depending on the price that you're paying, if you're paying like something that comes out of like a freezer or is in like the refrigerated section, the chance that that's not from like a concentrated animal operation is pretty low. If you're going to some butcher, that's in a small town, or you know about some farm that's like 20 miles outside of the city here, yeah, maybe you're getting actual real free range beef. But the reality is that we can't feed 330 million people that way, because if we were to actually move towards having grass-fed and free range beef, we would produce drastically less protein.
Right.
So, they estimate it's about 90% of meat consumption needs to be reduced for it to become sustainable. So that's going to leave a massive gap in terms of how we feed people. The number one sold meat, and you asked this, what is the number one thing that people are eating? The number one sold meat in America is Tyson nuggets. If you look at the top 5, yes.
Like kids' chicken nuggets kind of?
Yeah, Tyson nuggets.
Wow.
That's the number one selling meat in America. If you look at the top 5, 3 of the 5 are like Oscar Mayer Wiener hot dogs, Johnsonville brats, Tyson nuggets.
That's like the ground leftovers that they...
That's what people eat. And that's what's so important for people like us that are here in Los Angeles having conversations about, like, we have an Erewhon and like a Whole Foods, and, they'll tell you like the birth date and the horoscope sign of the cow you're eating, right? That's not how we feed the masses. That's not how most people live. And so when we talk about how do we scale how we feed people, we need to drastically reinvent what it means to produce protein in this country, because we can't sustain the way that we're doing it. And the stuff that people want to eat, it's not good for them. It's not good for them at all.
Yeah, it's definitely like you're saying about on the packaging too. You could say natural, it can say organic, and that does not mean that's what it is whatsoever. But then you dive into the ingredients in the back of something. And I remember learning this was well over a decade ago, but it can say something in there, but if it's less than 1%, they can actually take out the ingredient in there. They can it doesn't add up to what's actually in the packaging. So a lot of times you don't even know what you're getting. And that's someone who, I've been into working out for years now. And so I had to go into these supplement lines. I really want to know what I was getting in my body. And they will put things in you and cover it, like you say, oh, you're getting 80% protein, but it's concentrate and it's got all these other fillers and all this other stuff in it. And so you're like really only getting maybe 10% of protein. And so it's this backwards, messed up way of not only doing business, but it's people are consuming things they don't know they're putting in their body. And that's where we have all these health effects too, where it's like, well, I didn't know that it had this one thing I'm allergic to because it didn't say in the packaging that it was in there, and it's affecting my health for years to come. It's just mind blowing. And then same thing with the farms too, when you really dive into how inhumane and how crazy they are. Like even when I was really working on cutting, these are all things I learned from working out, right? Fish digest a lot faster in your body. And tilapia was considered one of the best ones at the time. And I remember doing some research on it and looking at these tilapia farms, how they're literally just eating their own feces and going back. And that's what they're doing in these little farmed tilapia farms. And it's disgusting. It's as gross as it can get, and it's not healthy. And it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. So the fact that the space, one, that you see the space and you're helping become not only an advocate, but telling people stories with your book that are all trying to make a massive change. Is like, we need you. We need more people like you, and we all need to move in this direction, because, like you said, it's not sustainable. What are we going to do 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Like, we're not going to have any of it.
Like, I think 10 is liberal, to be completely honest. I think that 5, honestly, right? Because you have to think, we're currently in geopolitical turmoil. We have a war in Europe right now. that war is not going to let up. And the disruption that we're going to see to the supply chain as a result of that, we've barely even seen it. So there's been a 20% increase in food inflation in the US right now. It's going to get so much worse because all that animal feed is skyrocketing in price. And so the Tyson CEO said a week and a half ago, they missed their earnings projections. You know, Tyson's the biggest meat company in the country. They missed their earnings projections and they said, we aren't going to have enough of a herd next year. There's going to be a meat shortage. They're already publicly saying it. And it's simply because there's not enough grain to feed these cows, right? Because that's what is the kicker when it comes to the way that we produce protein is we have to think about the entire footprint of the food that has to feed the food.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that nobody understands of the conversation. You know, when there's a war in Ukraine that produces a substantial amount of grain and sunflowers and things that are needed to become crops that we feed, like
oil, gas, everything.
It's mind blowing. And then you compare that to the fact that Canada had, 30% of the pea protein was lost to a drought last year. So if you combine both these shortages with the climate shortages that we're now facing, we're not going to have enough feed. So we've got two options. We turn the feed into human food, or we, take that feed and we produce less meat out of it, right? It's just like from a mathematical perspective, it's fucking dumb that we are putting all of that very small amount of crops into feeding something else that we get even less calories out of when we could be producing it for humans.
Right.
That's interesting. So some of these meats too, like how is the absorption rate in the body, the human body? Is it better than actual meat? Do you know?
So in terms of cultivated meat or plant-based?
Both, I guess.
So there's a certain amount that your body can consume of protein that you can get in one shot, right? It's like 25 grams, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on what I've known is it depends on the time when you do it. Like after workout, you can actually ingest a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's probably around 25.
So I think you're partly like an expert in this space, but one of the things that you have to have with plant protein is you absorb a little bit less, so you have to have more plant protein. That is a reality of plant protein, just the way that your body absorbs it. But you can get as much high quality. You just do need to, it's the same as like if you look at the protein that's in a vegan powder versus like a whey powder, you'll see that you actually have to consume a bit more, right? From a cultivated meat perspective, they have not brought it to the public yet. But as of right now, it is fully like it's meat. So the way that your body reacts with meat currently is how these products will react in your body, because right now they're producing identical to what you're used to. But what's going to be really cool is in a few years from now, once people start eating cultivated meat and they get used to like, oh, here's like the hamburger I'm used to. I've been eating it this way. And they're like, hey, you want to try like hamburger 2.0? Hey, do you want to try burger 2.0? Hey, do you want to try just like a disc of a protein that never even existed that we engineered that's actually a super protein that's way better for you than any living mammal? Because that's where we can go with it. We actually theoretically can create meat out of animals that aren't even like in existence.
Yeah. That was when we first had the conversation the other week. That was where my mind immediately went to, was the Jetsons, the little pill that you can have one pill and if you have all the nutrients you're ever going to need for the day. It's fascinating because we are, I think so many of us, we were talking about that earlier about, we have a vitamin D deficiency, vitamin C deficiencies, so many things that just through our daily process and maybe not having the right supplementation as well as, our genetic makeup, that some of us are able to ingest and digest certain proteins and vitamins and minerals better than others. There's the missing link that we can put in, like you're saying, to give us everything we need. So what does that mean? We'll have healthier bodies, we'll have more energy, we'll have better sleep, we'll, have better life experience, I think. We'll probably live longer,
Yeah, I mean, when I'm eating healthy, I'm a different human. I mean, diet and nutrition is so important. Are there any, there's like a little devil advocate question. Are there any like drawbacks to eating meat that isn't like real flesh, when it comes to cultivated meat?
There's one very, very massive drawback to it, and it's that we do not have the production means to scale it to any meaningful amount right now.
So no like physical, biological...
There's no, So in terms of like health to the human, No, it's been sold in Singapore for about 2 years now. It's completely safe for human consumption. It's going through rigorous FDA assessments right now. It has been for several years in the United States. So from a safety perspective, no problem. Wow. From a industry perspective, we are nowhere near where we need to be to have the technology to scale it right now.
But that'll come in time, right?
Yes, but we need to very significantly invest in building that infrastructure. Our entire world is built around the infrastructure of industrialized animal agriculture. Yeah. We will need to re-envision what like American farmland looks like in many ways, right?
I hope so.
Well, it really dovetails very nicely into like the regenerative movement, because that land needs to be reclaimed and regenerated. And I work with a lot of people at places like Cargill and Tyson, like the biggest meat companies in the world. And I talk to their executives and they all agree, and we all agree we need to regenerate the land. But the way that regenerative ag works is not going to produce like meat in any meaningful way. That's not really what it's meant to do. Like it's meant to have ruminants that are helping to capture carbon and things like that. So we can't rely on that to become the new way that we eat meat, because it doesn't make any sense. We need to figure out a new way to produce meat and also use regenerative ag. So I have a lot of regenerative ag folks I talk to, and they go, we need more cows. I don't, support what you're doing. And I'm like, I agree. Let's use the cows for what you're doing. But also that's going to have like a 90% whole of protein where you need to support what I'm doing. Like we actually are working on the same thing.
When you say regenerate the land, what does that mean? What is that process?
So this is where I am not an expert on regenerative agriculture. I know, there's various different ways that people want to do it, but essentially bringing cows back onto the land or other ruminants that can help to basically regenerate the soil. So we used to have bison that roamed all of the country. Yeah. We killed them all, largely to drown out the native population. We killed most of their bison because it was their food source. And so the land actually naturally does need something like a cow or a bison or something like that to work the land. And they actually show that when there is land that's growing like grass and things like that, it brings more rain.
Really?
Wow. It's wild. I've been doing so. This is like new for me because I did not dive too much into regen until the last few weeks in particular, because I met some advocates for it. I'm trying to find some common ground to understand them. But you actually can bring like more water.
Does it release moisture out of the earth and it goes up into the atmosphere or something? Or
I don't know the reason, but I know that in China, they've successfully done this where they've taken completely barren soil that they've regenerated and turned into like thriving, like water producing land. It's insane. Wow.
So I'm gonna look into that for sure.
Yeah.
That's the theory. So the theory is that if we can take all of this land that has been destroyed from, monocropping and industrialized agriculture, and we can regenerate it, we can regenerate the soil, get it producing again. That does require, most people believe that we need to have cows to do it because they are part of it. The ruminants, they help regenerate it. But
the grazing and the fertilizer and the
exactly. So they're a part, and even them like stepping and
releasing,
that actually is a part of it, just like the bison were.
Well, it's like turning the soil essentially, right? And
exactly.
And then you have their, for lack of a better term, feces. That's going to be fertilizing the soil. Their water or their pee is going to be essentially a form of water too. That can be fertilized through the water and go up back into however. It's starting to, make a little more sense. I have no idea.
This is what I'm saying. Like, it's very new to me because like my space has always been like, I focus very specifically on alternative protein. That's what I'm an expert in, but trying to understand how you can marry these two very large growing food movements together. If we do that, and I believe that we really should, we need to figure out how we're going to produce all that meat that we're not going to really make off of regenerating the land. And, they say some of our land is so degraded. We have like on the low end 30 harvests left.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio 22.